21 days because we stopped in Okinawa to drop off some dogs for an army general who was moving from Tokyo to Okinawa. But anyway, we spent an extra 4 days for the dogs. But anyway, we had a good time with that. 8,000 guys.
Playing with 4 dogs.
Playing with 4 dogs on their ship. But anyway, that was a 21-day trip. So I wondered how in the hell I was going to write this book about getting 1 million soldiers across the ocean. But today in this year, 2014, those ships crossed in 3.5 days.
Yeah.
So it was very, very possible to imagine that in 2025, 26, 27, China could build what they call in the maritime trade bottoms, big enough to carry 100,000 men each and have 10 or 12 of those ships built in different shipyards in the Chinese coast so they could launch an attack anywhere in the world in 3 or 4 days with 1 million soldiers. So, and a lot of rice.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I noticed that you imagined a fully resurgent communist party. Right now, China is a pretty capitalist country, but you seem to have pushed it back into the past.
Well, China is, for all its capitalism, is really and truly run by what we call what is the PLA, People's Liberation Army, and those guys are the old line, and the new ones come up, and they still abide by the doctrines. And there's still a vein of strong national fervor and patriotism on their end of the. Just because you're a capitalist over there doesn't mean you can't be a communist too. And some of the richest men in the world today are people in China. And evidence of that is the investment monies that are in other countries in the world today coming from privately held China sources. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe there's a mechanical conflict with the idea that just because they're become a capitalist country that they wouldn't take the proper steps to enlarge their sphere of influence and control, which is what they want to do in this book.
So are you seeing this book as a possible object lesson for the future?
No, I'm seeing it just as a
one of many possible futures?
A seed of thought, I think, mm-hmm. or seeds, a group of seeds of thought, a nucleus for thinking about what's what. A lot of what's in this book is stuff that the Pentagon has already been thinking about for a long time. Mm-hmm. If any of you read any of the writings of Seymour Hersh, who was a correspondent for the Defense Department, really, and he has talked about the things that the Navy are looking at, and I'm sure at the U.S. Naval War College up near Narragansett in Rhode Island, up on the East Coast there, I'm sure they are studying things like this. One of the first people to buy one of these books was a very brilliant woman who was the head of the library at Harvard University. And when I spoke to her, she said, well, I'm buying 2 books, Richard. She said, I'm buying one for our library and me. And she said, I'm buying one for the chief of China Studies at Harvard. I want him to read it. So I think some of the Army heads and Navy heads and Marine heads will take a look at this story and somehow relate to it. And somehow, I don't think it's going to change anybody's thinking. I think they know more about China than I do. I think they know more about China's plans than I ever will. But I saw it as an exercise in possibilities. Mm-hmm. And it is, everything in here I think is plausible. Everything in this book I think could happen. The cyber attacks, the way they get the men over here in a hurry, and deep in this book is also a story of betrayal. And I felt that was an important part of the novel because it gives a different texture to the story. And there's betrayal on the American side, and there's betrayal on the Chinese side. And the two betrayers are not exactly alike, and they don't have the same reasons. One is more moral, and one is more mendacious and self-serving.
Sneaky would be a good word.
Sneaky. This guy is a very sneaky guy. But I think you have to go to Russia to find sneaky people. But anyway, I've been dealt with sneaky people in Russia that really caused a lot of troubles. But I wouldn't go there today. I mean, I would go to Russia today, but I wouldn't go to those stories today. But in the bargain for this book, there's a story about people. There's a story about energy, the American energy that was rallied by the American president. There's a story about American history that she talks about in her speeches to the people. There's a story about the deceptions and ramifications of China's expansion. Even though they don't know exactly what they're doing, they think they know what they're doing. They say these are days of glory for China. It doesn't quite work out that way, but and the betrayers had something to do with it on both cases. So,
well, as it happened, our time has practically evaporated. This has been fascinating.
Well,
is there anything else people need to know about the book?
The book was printed in November. It was released to the public and to indie bookstores throughout America, and it sells in the high $20 range for the book. The book is 550 some odd pages. The book is a nice, strong book. It will last a long time. You could have a lot of people in the family read it. But the book is also on ebooks, and it's available usually for $9 or $8, something like that, in all the e-outlets. And you may have to help me with some of the names, but I know it's Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Baker Taylor. There's a whole host of them that are, Google, I think, has a book access.
In other words,
Kobo is one of the ones. You know any others off the top of your head?
I'm sure you're in all of them.
Okay, so we're in all the E ones, and we want to be in all the E ones because part of the book takes place in Australia. And if there's any Australians listening this afternoon or tonight or whenever you're hearing this, our two submarines that escaped from the Chinese went to Perth, which you have a big base there. And their Australians were very helpful to us. And also, we really believe personally that many Chinese will get a big kick out of reading this book. And they will act as a counterbalance. And I think that in the hearts of the Chinese people, they will say, oh no, we don't have this idea. We have another idea. We be friends. So let's hope that this is what happens.
Very good. Well, Richard Duvall, author of The Ox Factor, thanks again for a fascinating time.
And thank you, Steve.
And maybe we'll follow up in a few months to see how the book's doing.
Well, that's great. And good luck to you in Atlanta.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. This is Steve Seitz for Book Talk.